Greetings. You're listening to Rebels Remembered, featuring Caitlin DeFord and Kelsey DeFord.
Greetings, travelers across the galaxy. I am Caitlin.
I am Kelsey.
And this is Rebels Remembered. And this week we are looking at Season 2, Episode 17, The Honorable Ones. This aired on February 24th, 2016. Synopsis reads, Zeb and Agent Kallus find themselves stranded on an ice planet after a failed Imperial ambush. Kallus has been injured and they must work together to survive the harsh conditions. This is written by Kevin Hops, directed by Brad Rao, who we have seen before. Their names before.
Most of these names we've seen before.
This episode, for me, gave a new light on Kallus. I remember when I first watched Star Wars Rebels, he was like every other Imperial that you saw.
Kind of a stereotype of Imperials, yeah.
This kind of opened my eyes a little bit to him and the stuff he's gone through and why he's done what he's done up to this point. So I'm just throwing that out there. Some trivia we have here. So this was going to be my down when we get to it. This is what I was kind of nitpicking at with the episode. But the script at the very end would have specified that Kallus was picked up by an independent traitor who intercepted his distress call, and that the Empire had expended its allocated time to search for a missing officer, demonstrating their cold, inhuman nature. So it would have been...
There's a time limit on how long you can look for someone, apparently?
They just gave up search on them. They didn't care. So that kind of... It's like, well, it's not on screen. That's what the script says.
Yeah.
And it also would have said a traitor found him, not the Empire. They gave up searching on him.
Yeah, I wish they had put that in there.
Me too.
It would have given Kallus his little... I mean, we have the whole short interaction with Constantine, but I think that would have...
Because my first thought was, how did he get back there?
That was my first thought. One, how did he get back there? But also knowing what happens later, I think that would have given more weight to it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I'm terrible with names. But the creature in the cave, the bone Zami creature, is named after a Zamboni, which is like an ice machine that you use to on ice rinks and stuff to make it glassy or whatever. Its horn and beak is also inspired by a truck-mounted snowplow. So
okay, I kept looking at the mouth and I was like, why does it look like a shovel? Like, kind of flat like that.
At the very beginning of this episode, we see some construction, or leftover construction, above Geonosis. The construction spears that you see were inspired by Ralph McQuarrie's artwork for Return of the Jedi. And the construction spear is also of the same design as the Imperial complex that dominates Lothal's capital city, further underscoring the world's transformation to a factory for an Imperial war machine.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
They look the same.
So we start this episode with the crew investigating intel on an Imperial construction module, and they arrive over Geonosis. Sure enough, they see the base orbiting desert planet, but Chopper detects no life form readings coming from this world. So I have a little tidbits that I looked up about Geonosis. You've probably already aware of them. Anybody in Star Wars that is brushed up on the knowledge of it is probably aware of this too. So the original Death Star was constructed over Geonosis. After whispers of where it was, the Empire then moved it to Scarif, and Tarkin ordered them to sterilize the planet and gas the people.
Yeah.
Now, this is something we touch upon in Season 3.
Yeah.
When they come back to Geonosis, but I just wanted to... I just went to a dive with Geonosis for some reason.
Did you know that?
But...
Did we know that when... Well, I say, like, me and you. Did we have that knowledge when we first watched this episode, or did that come later after seeing Geonosis?
That came later.
Okay.
When they go back to it, that's when they realize that the planet has been gassed, except there's just one creature. Mm-hmm. And that's later in Season 3, but this is kind of the first thing we get of Geonosis. Mm-hmm. And even the crew is unaware of something must have happened for this entire planet to be wiped out.
Yeah, and we do see like Rex join this mission, which is interesting. We haven't seen him in a while, and he refers to the Geonosians as bugs. Because they kind of resemble that in a way. But yeah, even he's sort of shocked that, of course, he's been in hiding for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? There's supposed to be hundreds of thousands of bugs or these life forms on this planet, where did they disappear to?
And I think Ezra's the first one that mentions, like, they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can't remember if it was Hera or somebody says, well, let's not jump to conclusions just yet. I'm like, I mean, it's the Empire. So
Pretty dark, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. You sort of get that little tidbit that I think when I watched this, I was like, okay, we'll probably come back to this.
Yeah.
Because I don't know when Rogue One came out.
It was way after this, I think.
It was way after this.
Well, no, this came out in 2016. So.
I can't remember when Rogue One came out, but for some reason, that's when I started doing digging on how smaller things were connecting to a larger picture. And, you know, I think when season 3 came out, that's when I started doing more deep and dive into why they were exterminated and what they were constructing. So I want to say, we're jumping the gun here, but in season 3, I don't know if it ever says what they were constructing. But there's hints, like very large winks that it was the Death Star.
Yeah. So it's suspicious, but they decide to proceed with the mission and head for the construction module. They're looking for data, anything that could provide information on what they were building here. The base is unusually quiet, and Zeb says, my gut tells me this is a trap, and he's right. An Imperial astromech watches from the shadows, locking down doors, and then Kallus is waiting inside.
Mm-hmm. What was the mission there? I know they're looking for... their
intel on the
intel on what they were building.
Yeah. What I find funny about this is Chopper. They send in Chopper to take out that Imperial astromech, and they have a little Duke toe-to-toe.
Yeah,
like they go head-to-head
battle.
And of course he shocks the crap out of him, and they're kind of running from the stormtroopers, and I think stormtroopers were with Kallus, right? And Zeb's kind of... I mean, we're talking about two dudes that they don't get along. Okay,
yeah,
like we've already established that they don't like each other. So, the Ghost crew is leaving, but Zeb's locked in combat with Kallus. And he tells the crew, like, go on. I've got to, I'm just gonna use the escape pod, which, like I've said before, is so helpful.
Yeah, escape pods are always helpful. I do wonder, like, I can't remember exactly how he got separated from them. Did he just go full force on Kallus and everyone else went the other direction?
I think so. I think, like, he confronted Kallus, and then that's when they signaled to Hera, hey, we gotta leave, because,
Oh, yeah, because that's when we get that line from Hera. Oh, Agent Kallus, how lovely. It's pretty sarcastic. It was funny.
And then Kanan says, like, oh, just the usual... like, we just experienced this before, you know. So Zeb goes into the escape pod, and we think it's just him inside, and then Kallus is inside too. And they start trying to, like, fighting inside the pod, which to me I found kind of funny. I don't know why. Because they're just it's such a tight spot that, I mean, kind of humorous there.
Like, imagine being in close quarters, like, like shoulder to shoulder with someone you just absolutely despise.
Yeah. Their hatred for each other only intensifies when Zeb sends Kallus crashing into the controls. A thruster blows and it veers off course. They crash land, and Kallus's leg is broken. And we have this moment where Zeb takes his bow rifle, and you think he's gonna shoot him, but then he sees that his leg's crushed or broken or whatever, and he's like, okay, well, I think the title of this, The Honorable Ones, honor plays a big part in this entire episode. Mm-hmm. And he tosses his bow rifle away, and he brings Kallus outside of the pod, and he tells him he would love to destroy him now, but he'd rather wait for him to heal so they can finish their fight, which is an honorable thing.
Yeah, kind of like how, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to throw in an anime reference. Like in Sailor Moon, when they do the transformation sequences, like how the villains just wait
till they're done.
to start fighting them.
They debate what the outcome of the situation will be. Kallus assures Zeb that the Empire will come and he will be captured, but Zeb believes his friends will return. So at this moment, this is all about survival from this point onward. And I love how this moment where it's freezing, they're freezing to death essentially, and they have a little heat lamp or whatever. And Zeb's like, well, my friends will be coming for me. They know where we're at. And he's like, we're not on Geonosis. We're on a moon, which orbits around the planet.
Yeah.
And there's this transponder, which I guess is a beacon on the escape pod or something that beams out your location or something like that. But he wants him to contact the Empire, which I find kind of humorous. Like, well, it's almost like a debate of, like, who's gonna get here first.
Yeah.
And I love this moment because Kallus has already kind of given up. They just landed, they're freezing, they're cold, and he's like, they're never gonna find us, this heat lamp's not gonna keep us warm. And then Zeb says something I found interesting. He says, "You're so quick to give up. There's always hope." Ding ding ding! That word pops up again.
Yeah.
He has hope that his friends are gonna eventually find him and come for him. But I thought it interesting that Kallus is just already done.
Yeah. But it is interesting seeing that from Zeb's perspective as well. Usually he's sort of the glass half empty kind of guy. Yeah, that's true. So it's interesting seeing that in the reverse. And also, like, this idea of honor and, like, who gets honor, who deserves honor, plays into this episode. But also, as we'll see later, how each side views their own people. And we've talked about this before. But it is interesting that Kallus really thinks the Empire is going to be there first.
Yes.
He really thinks that, well, and I don't know if that's because he's like, well, I'm an agent and I've done all these good things and I'm like an asset, I'm important. Maybe it's that, but it could also just be like, well, it's the Empire. They were very strategic and capable, and maybe it's part of that too. But yeah,
it is interesting though that he thinks they're gonna. It's kind of sad. He thinks they're gonna save him too. Which what I just read earlier. They gave up their search.
Yeah, you get that from him, but you also get, but on the other hand, I don't know if it's weird. You get that, but you also get that he's given up. He's just like, I'm just gonna wait here. Hopefully they'll find me first, but if not, I'm probably gonna freeze to death. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like in the middle, but Zeb is just full force. Like, no, they're gonna come find me. It'll take a hot minute, but they'll be here.
So Zeb does fix the transponder. He adjusts the frequency, allowing anyone to pick up a signal. So, it's kind of a waiting game to see who's gonna pick them up or save them. Kallus assures him that the rebels won't win. And he says this thing like, every day we're recruiting more and more people
on our side.
And Zeb's like yes.
Defecting from the rebellion.
Yeah, and Zeb says yes, and every day people get tired of the Empire.
Yeah. Kind of like I don't know, like, make it sound punitive, but like, my sports team's better than yours, like everyone is on our side kind of thing.
So their heat lamp goes out, and they find this weird meteorite, which I found interesting, that just happens to be on this moon, which is interesting.
Yeah. Which it's interesting because Kallus assumes that it's a meteorite. He calls it a meteorite, but I'm like, where's the impact of this? Like, where's the crater? Like, how did it...
It was in like a little, I don't know, it was weird. Just chilling over there in like a little crater.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I touch it.
Crater. Yeah.
What is it?
Radiation.
Yeah. And what I find interesting here is he hands it to Kallus, like, here, warm yourself up. Which, for a guy that hates each other, I would have been like, nah, I'm keeping this, like, to myself.
Well, let's be honest. Zeb is kind of bulky.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming he has hair.
I was going to ask that too.
So he probably has more insulation than Kallus does.
True, I didn't think about that.
But still, yeah, doing that is... I think season 1 Zeb... I don't think season 1 Zeb would have done that.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Be like, no, this is mine. I'm going to hoard it.
They're like, well,
and you can't have it.
Freeze. Like, yep. I can imagine him doing that. But, yeah, he's grown as a person, so... Or as a little thought, excuse me. Then they hear this sound, which everybody knows in Star Wars. If you're in a cave, 100% chance there's a creature in there.
Mm-hmm. 9 times out of 10. Yeah. Like, that's why in the video games I hate going to the caves. Like, I know this is not a good idea.
There's something there. Then we have this moment where he tells him, well, the transponder's never going to get through the ice to beam out to anyone. And then Zeb tries climbing the walls to reach the top, but falls. And which Kallus finds humorous. And then Zeb says, how would you like a few more broken bones? So here's a little bit of season 1 Zeb coming out, I think. And then they're confronted with this beast, which is the, what did I call it? Bonzami creature. It's 4-legged and it's white fur with a horned head and razor sharp teeth. Sounds so great and so fun. They can make friends with it, right? So Zeb runs away from it, eventually falling as the animal overwhelms him. So then he shoots at it. and he tries to hide in the escape pod or whatever. But then Kallus, interestingly enough, uses his bow rifle and blasts the animal away from Zeb.
Which I don't know why. I guess because it's going all the way back to season 1 when they first had that first battle. I completely forgot that Kallus even had a bow rifle.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't know why. I just forgot that little piece of information. Then I saw the scene. Like, oh, yeah, he's got one too. Like, for some reason, I don't know if it's
I don't think we've seen it in a while.
Used it as much, or if at all, in the last season. But I guess because season 2, he's mostly kind of behind the scenes, not really combat that we've seen so far. So yeah, I completely forgot that information.
That moment in season 1 where he's first introduced, where he's like, or not first introduced, when he first confronts Zeb and he's like, face me, and he pulls out the rifle, and that's when Zeb's like, where the heck did you get that? Like,
yeah, I guess because season 2 is mostly procedural stuff.
Yeah, he's mainly doing. Like in his office or in like
giving out orders or something.
So together they drive back the Great Beast. They're safe for now, but I think Kallus says it'll probably come back with friends. I don't know how he knows that. I don't know.
Being pessimistic again, probably.
Yep, probably, yeah. To me, this is one of the most. Well, they have various conversations in this episode, but we start to get in more deep conversations about them and their motives and who they are as people, and so they each have a reason for why they're doing what they're doing, but also this is where Zeb starts to make Kallus question it, because he says he doesn't know what happened to the Geonosians, and Zeb's like, you're just afraid to learn the truth.
Well, also not only that does he not know, he said, I never asked the question. So it's not just like, oh, I don't know. It's like, I know that something happened, but I'm not willing to ask the question.
But it's almost like, do you not want to
know what happened? Yeah.
But so there's that.
Yeah.
And this is where Zeb looks at his bow rifle, and that's when he's still mad about it. You shouldn't have that. You know, it's not a trophy. And that's when Kallus makes the statement that, no, a Lasat that I defeated in battle gave it to me. And what's it called? Zeb calls it Busan Kara or something like that. Like, more about the Lasat culture, I think. About honor. And, you know, it, like, I concede to you, so
you deserve to have this.
My weapon.
My weapon, yeah.
And then we get, to me, one of the most important pieces about Kallus here, where he, you know, Zeb's talking about, you know, I can't forget what happened at Lasan, and then Kallus says a Lasat mercenary working for Saw Gerrera, which we will see in season 3, who is kind of a loose cannon, killed his squad mates. They went in to do a mission, and I love the way he describes it too.
Yeah, I love the way that David, I want to butcher his last name. I love the way that David delivers this, because you can almost, like, hear that he still carries some trauma with it. Because he's like, I just woke up, and they were just all dead, and I don't understand why I survived, and maybe some survivor guilt is involved. But yeah, I love the way that David delivered that little monologue.
But also he describes the Lasat as, like, walking through the smoke and very menacing.
Walking through smoke and fire was the line that I was like, oh, like, that's very menacing. But also, a Lasat being a mercenary. This is supposed to be someone, this is from, again, we can't assume that all Lasats are the same, or
right,
which is exactly what Zeb says, but for a people that are involved in an honor culture and an honor system, it's interesting that one of them, one Lasat became a mercenary. Those two things just don't.
It might be because they are warrior people. I feel that there's a part of that. Maybe not as bad as Mando's, but
yeah, crave the hunt and crave violence.
Yeah, I chose violence today.
Yeah, I choose violence every day. I guess that was that Lasat's. But what happened to him? You know, was he on the sun?
Yeah, I don't know. So Kallus has a reason that's finally revealed to this point why he cannot stand Lasats. Well, like, you just assume in season 1, oh, it's because he's Imperial, and he says, I gave the order to use the weapons, which he says later in this episode that he didn't get the order for that. like, so I keep going back to that part where he says, Lasat face me, and he says it with such anger.
Oh,
it makes me wonder, like, is he thinking...
That was subconsciously, like, revenge for his fallen comrades, I guess, in a way. Yeah, I didn't think about that. I will say, we do get that, which Zeb, of course, says you can't blame all Lasats for what no one did. Similar to the conversation that Kanan had to have with Rex.
Yeah.
But we still don't get, and maybe it's just one of those things that we'll just never know, is he was already in a Imperial unit, I'm assuming, when he faced the Lasat mercenary, so why did he join up with the Empire, you know? What motivated him to join the Imperial Academy? And
that's a good question.
We do get some backstory on his reasonings, as much as they are about the way he feels about Zeb, but we don't get why he initially joined up with the Imperials.
But I love how Zeb says you can't blanket all of us. All the thoughts are not the same. And then he says, does that apply to Imperials?
And Zeb pauses. He doesn't really answer him, which is, to me, is interesting, because it's almost like you have two different sides of a war where, and this is just in war in general, there is so much dehumanizing of the other person that you're fighting, possibly killing, because it's easier to fight someone if you don't see them as human, as someone that has feelings and has their own issues and stories and background and all of that.
That's a good point. I was like really smart. They resolve to work together as Kallus knows how they can reach the surface. They'll climb a pillar, which this part's kind of humorous, where he's like, I know how we can get out of here. Mm-hmm. Kind of, like, he's still kind of insulting Zeb's intelligence a little bit.
Yeah, he's like, how? He's like, that column won't hold us up. It's like, well, it's holding up this cave. Like, I'm going to use my physics, knowledge here. But also, like, the fact that I wrote down, Zeb has extremely strong legs and arms, because he throws the transponder and I believe the bow rifle.
Yeah.
It's a good 10, 12 feet in the air and then land outside of the hole that they crashed through. Like, dang.
Yeah. He ain't no slouch.
Because that was my question when Kallus was like, well, they can't probably get the signal because the transponder's down here. He just chucks it. I'm like, oh, well, that took care of that. Now you just gotta get out of the hole.
Get out of it, yeah. So they begin their ascent up the pillar, but they're soon interrupted as two. Kallus was right, there's two of them. This part was very, like, nerve-wracking to me.
Yeah.
So they begin nipping at Kallus's legs. And then he kind of falls, I think, and then Zeb catches him with his feet, and he's just kind of holding on to his feet, and he's just kind of dangling with the creature.
Luckily enough, it was with not the broke leg.
Or was it?
I think when I watched it, I think I went back to make sure it wasn't the actual broke leg.
Check it on Kallus to make sure. That would have been awful. Oh yeah, we forgot to mention that Zeb actually bandaged his leg with his rifle.
Oh,
actually.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this part was so scary, where he literally throws Kallus and his foot pierces the ice. And he's just kind of dangling, which to me, I got Jurassic Park vibes from this.
Yeah, I did too. Like, it's like the jaws of the creature just almost barely nipping him, in the leg. But to me, what was funny was, it wasn't funny, but I did laugh. I guess I have dark humor. When the spike at the end of, I guess it's a bayonet or something, and the rifle starts kind of falling out of the ice, and then you get David, no.
I will say David did such a good job in this. Both him and Steve did such a good job in this episode.
Which I believe they record together, so I think that comes across in this.
I think so, yeah.
Episode.
Because, like, we have moments of really deep conversations with them, but we also have, there's a lot of humor in this episode, too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the creature continues its attack, and Kallus's brace starts to slip. Seeing this, Zeb leaps onto the beast, catches him, and tosses him up and out of the cave.
Again, strong legs. He did not skip leg day.
He did not, dude. So then Zeb kind of runs up the backs of these creatures and jumps on the top, and he's kind of just dangling on the ledge, and that's when you just see Kallus with his rival or...
And let me just say, like, we've seen sort of these wind effects before with, I believe it was Lost Commanders with the sandstorm, but this is the first time we actually see some kind of blizzard happening, which I love the animation in it. And we also get the sort of breathy cold that we've seen in the last episode. But yeah, that shot of, like, Zeb laying there and you just see Kallus and you can barely see him because of all the snow. Like, I thought that was animated really well.
And then when he comes into view, you're like, oh crap.
And then, like, it's almost like the gun's out of focus, then it's in focus, and then he moves it to shoot the creature.
Mm-hmm. So, question, when you first watched this episode, did you think he was going to shoot Zeb, or did you think he was going to shoot the creature? I was worried a little bit.
I was worried a little bit just because his track record is not the greatest as far as, like, setting up traps and stuff. But after they had that discussion about the tradition that Zeb mentioned, okay, this guy just saved your life. The honorable thing to do is to save his life.
Right.
So part of me was like, yeah, he's probably going to
save
do that.
him. Yeah. And he does. And then he offers him a hand and he pulls him up from the little hole they were in. So then they're in this little cave, and a big step for Kallus here is he apologizes for what happened on Lasan. He's like, that wasn't my decision. I took credit for it, but I didn't know what they were going to do.
Took credit for moving up a little bit, which is kind of skeezy, but but yeah, the fact that he actually was able to apologize, which is again new information for me. I forgot about because in season 1 we, I guess, assumed that he told him a lie about I gave the order to use the weapons on your people. Ha ha ha.
And that might have been him because of his hatred for Lesage at that time. It was probably him digging at him too. Yeah. A little bit.
Like, I know what can hurt you. Let me say this.
Mm-hmm. And I think Zeb has a moment where he's like, well, Lasan, I put it behind me. Because we just had an episode with Zeb which I think was a big step for him. And, I mean, he can't forget what happened, but he's kind of moved on from it, is what he says. Mm-hmm. So outside, they activate the transponder, and they're like, okay, well, we'll see who's gonna get
even
here.
when they're behind that rock, and then he's like, well, I think someone might be coming, and then Zeb's like, yeah, but who? Even me, I was like, I don't
whoever,
because we very briefly go back to the rebels and the ghost, and they're trying to find Zeb, and I think even Ezra and Kanan like go down to the surface of Geonosis, and there's like nobody there, which again dark, but also like part of me was like, how are you gonna find that he's on this moon? Like, part of me was like, come on, guys. How close is this moon to this planet? If he didn't land on that planet, he's probably
gotta be around
close somewhere.
By. I'm going to piggyback what you said there, too, because I think we're going to get to it here in a minute about the difference between which we've touched on, the Rebellion and the Empire.
Yeah.
Where they're looking for Zeb, and they're not leaving till they find him. And even Rex was like, well, guys, the Empire might show up. And Hera just says, well, we're just going to have to work faster. Mm-hmm. Like, they've made the decision they are not leaving him.
Mm-hmm. And that's something we've seen before with Ezra in season 1. They go back to rescue him after Zeb leaves him. I'm going to put that behind us for a second. When they go back for Kanan at the end of season 1. So this is sort of a recurring thing that no matter what it costs them, they're more willing to go after people they care about. Which Empire, not so much.
No, they don't care. They don't care, which is very sad. Mm-hmm. But it also shows the difference in the two sides. So the ghost crew does show up, and, Zeb's, looking back at Kallus, like, I'll just wait for the Empire to show up. And I'm sitting there going, dude, I don't know if they're going to show up or not.
Yeah.
So they have a newfound respect for each other. They say their goodbyes, and they kind of do this weird, like Zeb puts his fist together. I don't want to say firebending thing or earthbending.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a little Lasat greeting or I don't know. Just kind of a moment of, okay, hey, we understand one another now.
Mm-hmm. And I do wonder, Zeb kind of, which again he's grown a lot since we first meet him, is when he's talking to the ghost crew and Ezra's like, oh, I'm cold. Yeah, but like I've been out here longer than you have. It's like, oh, it's 2 seconds too long. Anyway, when he's talking to them, he has this moment where he looks back to see if Kallus is still standing there. And part of me wonders, was Zeb concerned that
he was going to leave him?
He was going to die out in the blizzard. Like, he probably wasn't going to see him again. And I do wonder if that continued after.
Yeah, I
when they
wonder that
left the
too.
planet.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then I'm like, are you not going to tell them that you were talking to Kallus?
Yeah, he doesn't even mention it.
Doesn't he mention that Kallus is there? Which, again, speaks to there's some level of trust beginning, because I'd be like, hey, this guy from Imperial's like literally sitting right there, like, just letting y'all know. He might call some of his buddies or something.
Yeah.
But I think it just speaks to, like, their moment they had.
And of course, they're, happy that Zeb's there. I think Hera was like, we were so worried about you.
Yeah.
And Kallus is overhearing all of this.
Yeah, that's another thing, is that Kallus was hearing all of that.
Mm-hmm. And he gets back to the Empire. Limping. Freaking limping, my dad. You can see him limping down the corridors. And he runs into Constantine. Oh, Admiral Constantine. I don't know what he was expecting. He's like, oh, Agent Kallus. No greeting. No, we're so glad to see you. How are you doing? Are you okay? We were worried. We don't know what happened to you. What happened to you? They don't even ask what happened to him. Nothing. Like, no, you're here to do a job.
And you failed.
And we don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes into his little quarters. Well, he still has the meteorite, which I find interesting. And he says it beside his, on his, I guess it's a table or something. And what I find so funny about this is when he first goes into his quarters, he looks around and it's just gray, bland, boring. It's not like a
cold.
Sabine makeover. Very cold,
Yeah, I didn't think about how they actually, like,
the bed doesn't look comfortable at all.
Point of making it look that way. Or at least showing us Kallus' perspective of maybe he's viewing things differently than he did before he left.
I think Zeb made him question some things.
Mm-hmm.
But also I think it just reinforced when he got back from basically almost dying. That's sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad. So, what did you rate this episode?
I think I gave it a 7.
I gave it an 8.
Oh, did you?
I really enjoyed it. I hadn't watched it in so long, but it's a really good episode, I think.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. The pacing, if I had to nitpick, just because they're in this crater the entire time, but that can't be helped if...
Yeah.
I mean, you're straying out of crater with somebody. It was almost like sort of a buddy adventure, too.
Yeah,
which we've seen before, but with other characters. But this was like Imperial and Rebel, trying to survive together. The animation I really enjoyed, and seeing more background on Kallus and his reasoning. Like, it makes me see, and I always forget it that whole Lasat mercenary.
I've totally forgot about it.
And so it makes me go back and think about when they first met. It makes me look at it differently than when I first saw it. But I also think it's important that when you look at some people that are in the Empire, is they can just as easily become this stereotype.
True.
And it's usually a British colonial type evil person. Like, you're evil. And, like, I mean, there are some Imperials that are just straight up bad, but I think it humanizes them more.
They're soldiers.
Yeah.
And I think one thing he mentions to Zeb is, I was only doing my duty. Oh, I was going to ask you. So, I remember when I first watched this episode with you, and you already had this love of Kallus for some reason.
I don't know where that came from. I don't know.
And I remember the end of this episode when he's sitting in his quarters, and he's sitting there all by himself. Like, I remember you looked at me and smiled, and you were like, I think he's gonna deflect. You felt so strongly that he was gonna deflect.
I mean, the way that it's set up, and, like, they made a point to show his bed, and made a point to show his reaction to Constantine treating him like crap. And so when it ended, I was like, yeah, he's gonna defect. I don't know when, I don't know where, I don't know how he's gonna do it, but...
Like, you were so happy, too. You're like, yes, I want him to be on their side. Like,
please see the light, please. Also... just me, maybe it's my hero brain, is like, he could be an important asset. I mean, he's very strategical. He knows all about their empire. So that was part of it too. I was like, he'd be such a cool team player.
We can use you.
not like that. It sounds like that, but Hera, speaking of Hera, flying the ship upside down was pretty
I was going to mention that. That was so cool.
Yeah.
And I love how, as they went under, you have everybody's reactions. Like, you have Sabine kind of looks, and then you have, I think it's Kanan on the bottom, like,
What's happening?
what's going on? That was really cool. I forgot about that part.